Hey, hey, hey! How's everybody doing? Yeah! Pumped, I can tell. So, many studies focus on the cross-industrial impact of artificial intelligence 5, 20, and 30 years from now. Forget that timing. The future is here. And there are thousands of cross-sector case studies. As traditional industries and businesses grapple with digital transformation amidst changing competition, markets and customer tastes, they must find complacency and they must fight complacency, not find it, very important, fight the complacency, and prioritize AI and IoT or suffer the consequences. Here to explain why inertia will drive extinction, please welcome the President of Uptake, Ganesh Bell.
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Ganesh Bell. That's my Twitter handle, @GaneshBell. And I'm here to talk to you about what I think is the greatest threat that's facing every single business and industry in the world today. And I work for Uptake. I run Uptake. Uptake's an enterprise AI and industrial IoT company. We provide a platform, a suite of applications, and we're also actually curating data across many different industries. And we work with over 100+ customers, and we solve machine learning problems across enterprise use cases, as well as deliver deep outcomes in industries like energy, oil and gas, manufacturing, transportation, and big, heavy equipment industries in the world. And we're a little over 4 years old. And when people think about what's happening in business today, you all heard the word Industry 4.0, digital transformation, digitization, and as Europeans more accurately call it, digitalization, which is creating new value, new revenue from digital assets. I would say those are not the biggest threat. The biggest threat facing any business is actually complacency. And why is that? And I'll talk a little bit about it. So if you remember the birth of data processing, and if you go back to the late 1700s when the US actually started collecting census data, and somewhere in the 1800s, they hit a problem of actually not being able to finish the census. In the 10-year period, they were collecting the data to start the next census. And in the late 1880s, a man named Hendrik Hallerud created a tabulating machine and compressed the time it takes to process all the census data and all the analytics from 8 years to 6 years. And he went on to create the tabulating machine business company, which became IBM later on. And this is the birth of our modern data processing. Fast forward 100 years, we had Mark Benioff create Salesforce.com and create the no software movement. Although it was clever marketing, we know it was not the end of software or even the rebirth of enterprise software as we know it, but it's definitely the rebirth of the enterprise software business model. And I would argue over the last 2 decades, while we have made great strides in making sure that business software is accessible, consumable, extensible, integratable, and fairly democratized access to many different kinds of users, we really haven't changed the architecture of most business software. In fact, I would argue that in the last several decades of business software, humans have been entering data, and that's the design paradigm for all of business software. And every single business that underpins their business value in some kind of enterprise business process is running software that's designed for an era where humans enter data. And when you think about that, it's just a simple database crawler application. As humans entering data and business process happens as a matter of data state change, and we're automating business processes. So we really haven't reimagined software at all. And if you think about every single change that has happened, it has all been a technological change, which is whether it's moving from mainframe to client server, to distributed computing, to pseudo web, to SaaS, to cloud, it's still the same application. It's still data state change happens, business process change happens, and that is basically the state of enterprise software. But I believe that we are actually at a generational shift, a seminal moment in the history of business software. And why is that? Because for the first time, you can argue that there are more machines generating data, there are more robots at work, there are more drones at work, there are more humans augmented with machines generating data, and you could argue that all of this data is way more impactful and meaningful than any of the data that humans are entering into business applications. And that requires a completely different architecture and a paradigm. And also, when you think about all of this data in the industries, with the rise of IoT and sensors and technology and the breakthroughs in machine learning and AI, we're able to apply them in a very different way. And I would argue that this is probably the time to fundamentally reimagine business processes and move from automating business processes to automating business decisions. And this change is actually already happening in many of the industries. And I would say in many of these industries that are actually more human skill and human intelligence dependent, in every one of these industries, it'll be augmented by artificial intelligence. And it may seem hyperbole, but this is already starting to happen, where human intelligence is being codified in algorithms, and we're starting to build expert systems in many of these industries where the expert is no longer the three operators that you have, but is actually a combination of algorithms that you're actually building. And the building blocks are being laid down right now in many of these industries. And I would say the biggest impact for AI is actually in industries that actually are the infrastructure of the world. Industries that feed us, industries that move us, transport us, heal us, and help us build other infrastructures in the world. And these are some of the industries where the impact is incredibly high. And why? Because there is incredible drop in industrial productivity over the last decade. In fact, the last decade, industrial productivity has come down to almost less than 2%. And unused data at the same time is only going up, machine data. And you may have all heard different kinds of stats, whether you believe 20 billion assets being connected or 50 billion devices being connected. I would say that regardless of what is getting connected in the future, even with what is connected already now, there is less than 1% of data that's actually being used in most of these industries. And I would argue that there's absolutely no new sensor or device even needed to generate value in many of these industries. Yet, at the same time, in many of these industries, the nature of work itself and the future of work is radically changing. Workforces, aging workforces that are retiring in these industries are taking away deep institutional knowledge when they walk out of the door. Yet, at the same time, in these industries, they're struggling to attract new talent, new generational talent, that are digitally savvy to come and apply new ways to work. But they're also increasing the robots that are at work, drones that are actually at work doing inspections, and humans being augmented with other wearables and devices, so the data is only going up. With all of this, the need is clearly there in terms of doing disruption with AI and machine learning. And the opportunities are actually exploding. There's hundreds of use cases in every one of these industries, in fact, thousands. Use cases like predictive maintenance or maintenance optimization, or going and looking at new business models where OEM and manufacturers of equipment are going to as-a-service business model and making sure that they can write outcomes. All of this has to be underpinned by data. In fact, the value of this is very high for entrepreneurs in the room. It's anywhere from $3.5 to $5.8 trillion, according to McKinsey, with just applying AI. But then if you look at broader IoT and applying AI, it's even bigger per year. This is the amount of value you can go create in all these industries. So the need is there. The opportunity is big. Yet, there is huge complacency. In fact, predicting the industrial disruption or business disruption in itself has become a cottage industry. There are many companies, and you often hear overused stats like this where 52% of Fortune companies are gone and 40% will be gone. But I would say these don't capture the whole story. Recently, we had Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, who came and visited Uptake, one of the authors of AI Superpowers and one of the foremost leading experts in AI, having created 14 unicorn companies and 5 of them AI companies. And he said, time is the only thing the AI revolution is not inclined to give us. As in, if companies are falling behind in reimagining their industries, reimagining their business and software, they're going to be even further behind with AI and ML. So how do you lead in a world that's actually being reimagined, reinvented, redefined, recoded in software? And this is what we've been doing at Uptake for a little more than 4 years, where we've been quietly working with some of the leading industrial companies in the world. That's where we started because the value of AI is pretty high and machine learning is very high, but we're applying it to broader enterprise use cases. And we started with a very simple idea that the machines in all of these industries have actually been speaking reliably, but nobody's been listening. So think about it. If you and I are posting our statuses on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, we do it when we feel like we want to do it, versus machines have been reliably posting their statuses. And if I like somebody's newsfeed, it doesn't make me model your best behavior, but if a machine can actually like another machine's performance, it can actually model best behavior. So it was a very simple idea of how do you map an industrial asset graph and then go to an enterprise business graph of data. And we started connecting all of these things and started quickly realizing huge amounts of value. And in over 4 years, we built an industrial AI and IoT platform, a platform that's actually powered by over 1.2 billion hours of operating data where algorithms are being trained. And in the process, we've curated data where it's more than 1,000 critical assets across all these industries and about 55,000 ways these assets can actually fail. So we're now able to get to a point where our mission of a world that always works is actually possible if you deploy this kind of technology and software. And this is a huge opportunity not just for companies like us, but other growing ecosystem of entrepreneurs as well as investors into the future. But let me give you a journey of how this came about, how this platform came about. It was something as simple as, we started looking at machines, and we knew that in many of these industries, they operate using first principle physics-based analytics, which is very important, but it only takes less than 1% of data, operational data, actually into consideration. So we knew that we could apply simple ideas of anomaly detection with unsupervised learning to predict some ideas or detect anomalies. But what if you could do that as an engine? What if you can actually do that across a series of assets, series of failure modes, series of industries? We quickly became an anomaly detection engine. And then we started predicting failures across many different industries. We started predicting failures in wind. We started predicting failures in locomotives. Today, for a large OEM of a locomotive, we predict more than 90% of all the failures that's ever going to happen in their locomotive purely through machine learning. And very quickly, we started building other engines. And all of these engines started forming the basis of a platform. And we started applying it in one industry, like heavy equipment and construction, and we started applying it to multiple industries, including energy, oil and gas, defense, transportation, and the value is enormous. Just in rail, a Class 1 railroad can save up to $100 million a year by applying these technologies, and they do today. Our customer does. And by doing something as simple as a virtual load test of the entire unit with our software, they are saving over $38 million in fuel. So think about that. It's not just money savings. It's $38 million of fuel that is not getting burned and put into the atmosphere. So there's actual societal impact to applying these solutions as well. And for a manufacturer, that means increasing efficiency and productivity. And we're seeing efficiency and productivity improves as high as 82%. And in wind, we have a customer who's connected about 2,500 wind turbines to our cloud and our edge solutions. And we're actually helping them produce more energy from the same wind. And if we just apply that same technology across all the wind in North America, I could power the entire city of Chicago, as well as save about 1.7 million tons of CO2 into the air. That's almost like taking 300,000 cars off the road. So not only is the value high, the opportunity high, it actually has societal benefits applying this problem as well. So if the need is there, the opportunity is big, why is this not being solved? Well, it's a tough problem. This is not as easy as taking the same old enterprise software, putting it on the cloud, and making a quick buck. This is not talent management redone in the cloud. This is not expense software redone in the cloud. This is not just the same old CRM redone in the cloud. This is deep tech. This actually requires deep industrial knowledge, deep subject matter experts, but you have to do that with a very strong belief system. So for people in the audience, if you are in any one of these industrial companies or even enterprises applying machine learning, I would say first build a belief system. Your only job is to actually convince your CEO, your chairman, your C-suite, your coworkers, because it's got to start at the top, that you've got to understand critical control points. Critical control points of applications, algorithms, data in your industry and in your business. If you don't understand that, then you won't be able to make progress. And if you're an investor investing in SaaS companies, especially AI companies that do enterprise AI, you've got to have a different lens to value in how you return these businesses. Because these are long investments, these are deep tech investments, and you've got to think about those companies in a very different way versus the traditional, hey, redo the same idea in the cloud and make a quick buck. So you've got to have a different lens in how you approach enterprise AI companies. And if you're a SaaS company, I would say that you've got to think about it as a tough problem space that you've got to solve, but you also have to look at it with a different lens of problems that attract people, not just the best technologists, but problems that have actually a purpose in the world. And with that, I would say one thing I would urge all of us to think about is not just solve problems of convenience, but solve problems of consequence. So it is a huge opportunity, and I wish you all well. Thank you.